Leave your office, get out there and meet everybody that does every job.
Hello, my name is Jason Reichl, and you're listening to Risk Management Brick by Brick. I'm fascinated with people who are helping build and maintain the physical world around us. On each episode of this podcast, we'll dive in with a risk manager, speak to them about how technology plays a role in this process.
Thank you for joining me on Brick by Brick, Laura. I really appreciate you joining, taking time out from your risk world. I thought you'd be an interesting guest to have on the podcast, talking about manufacturing, talking about the risks there. But before we do that, let's get to know you a little bit. Where do you come from? Did you always want to be a risk manager?
I probably 30 years ago, I didn't know what a risk manager is, but thank you for having me and giving me a chance to take a break during RISKWORLD. I started off as an administrative assistant in the company. I had an interest in law and just kind of grew up in the company, had great mentors, and learned about risk management from them.
In your own words, what is risk management? Like, what do you think of as?
So managing the risks of the company, for me, I do mostly what I call the insurance of inanimated objects. So if you don't take risk, you run the risk of blowing opportunities. So there has to be a certain amount of risk that you take on. And it's just navigating the company's risk appetite and their values and their culture and financing for future risk.
Let's talk about your company and talk about how it's set up so that people can understand on the podcast what you oversee from a risk management perspective.
So Burnham Holdings is a holding company. We have about 24 subsidiaries within the holding company. 10 of them are manufacturing companies, and they manufacture mostly boilers, furnaces, and HVAC-related equipment.
Which has a lot of different parts in it, right?
Yeah.
And when you manufacture that, you're not manufacturing the whole thing. You're manufacturing a part of it and getting vendor supplies in and putting them in. So you have also a very strong relationship with third-party vendors, managing them and getting all that stuff done. So it's complex operation, right?
Yep.
I think when we talk about risk in manufacturing, what a lot of people don't understand is how complex that is. So let's talk about what some of your risk programs look like. How do you think about building a risk program? Is it company by company that you help build those out? Is it a holistic corporate strategy? What is sort of your approach there?
It is a holistic corporate strategy, but then you have to be cognizant and aware of each of the subsidiaries' own needs and nuances. You know, we have residential, commercial, industrial. We have a foundry. Their risk is very different than the manufacturer of, a small furnace company in North Carolina.
Right.
We have an engineering company. They don't manufacture anything, but they need professional insurance, which is very different than any of the other companies. So it's a holistic approach, but I think it's also very important to understand and get on the production floor or show up at all of these different companies and learn from not just the general managers, but introduce yourself to the guy who's sweeping the floor and learn what is important for each location.
It seems to be, a theme in risk management. You have to be curious and that you have to really understand all of the organization from top to bottom. I think that really makes risk managers sort of an ear for the company beyond just what risks we have, but like bringing that information up the ladder into the executive realm. I'm seeing more and more risk managers have direct ties to the operations team or the finance team and giving them information that helps their strategies be successful. One of the things that I like to ask, and I know that sometimes some of this information is private, so you can reflect on this if you want, but in the past year, what's the biggest risk you faced and how did you navigate through it?
I would have to say New Year's Eve morning, we had a fire at a facility, about a 99,000 square foot plus facility. And it ended up being not that bad because the plant was closed at the time. It was on a Sunday. There was nobody in the plant. There was no production going on. So we didn't have any injured employees, which is the best case scenario. And I have to say, having gone through years before a cyber ransom event and going through a fire, I would rather go through a fire. You knew where the danger was. But we had, I think at the scene that morning, we had our maintenance manager, we had our general manager, random maintenance guys were showing up because it was on Facebook. As I live a mile away from the facility. As I'm driving to the facility, my neighbor texted me and said, I saw on Facebook that there's a fire at your facility. They were still putting it out. Word
Yeah.
got out very quickly. And some of our, maintenance guys were showing up on the scene going, what can I do? How can I help? Where should I be? So we had a fantastic
Like,
team.
just stay out of there.
Yeah. Well, once we were allowed back in and everything was cleared and the team just came together and did an awesome plan, we were back up in production in a week.
Oh, wow. What was the insurance part of that like to navigate?
Might be a commercial for FM Global, but we work with FM Global. We have more than a 45-year relationship with them. Sitting in the car in front of the building that was being put out, I called them. The next day they were there on the scene.
That's amazing you got the production back up and running after a week.
Yeah. We didn't have any damage to any major components. Our guys were able to come in and help with the remediation.
Were you able to trace it to what happened?
Electrical. There was never any one pinpointed.
Now, when you guys are building out facilities and working on construction projects for like the facilities, are you taking into account modern fire protection, electric, like those kind of things now? I mean, you probably did then too, but
certainly. And this facility, we have a lot of very old facilities. Our company is hundreds of years old, and some of our facilities are very old and have been repurposed. This particular facility is probably 4 different buildings that have been cobbled together over time. FM Global is great with coming in and making recommendations, but we're about to build out another facility and do major construction. And we bring in FM Global. That was the first thing I said. When they said, hey, we're doing this building project, I said, call FM Global. We want them involved from the beginning so that they can make the recommendations on the construction so it's done right the first time.
That's interesting. One of the things that we have here is how is risk management and manufacturing different from other industries like construction, like property management? From your experience, what do you think makes manufacturing difficult and interesting from your lens?
Well, I've only ever done risk management in manufacturing, but I would say that the component aspect, because we manufacture we'll say the base, the pressure vessel or the heat exchanger, everything else, the controls, the low water cutoff valve, the aquastat, all of that is manufactured by somebody else, the burner. So we need to have good partnerships and we need to trust our partners and we need to collect a lot of certificates of insurance.
And when you're dealing with these other manufacturers, do you have an equal peer on their end, or are you often helping them and consulting with them on what they should get?
So engineering, we're helping them, they're helping us.
Oh, you guys co-engineer the solutions together?
We'll co-engineer. I look at a lot of NDAs where we have co-projects between our suppliers and our engineers to develop things. Some of them are just for our products. Of course, that puts us in a risk of a single source of something that we need to produce our product. So it's a trade-off.
You probably keep a risk registry or something like that, right? How do you manage that? I mean, because it feels like there's like 1,000 things that could possibly go wrong and you're mitigating them. Do you break it out into vendor risks and facility risks and like you put it all together to surface it to the top of the organization?
It's constantly moving. It's a moving target. There's a lot of different silos of information throughout the organization, and using better insurance tech or programs to be able to get all of those silos into one spot and make it accessible. Because even though we have different subsidiaries that make boilers, if we can share information, all boats rise. It's better for everybody that we share information between our subsidiaries, but that we can access all that information so that I know if this company is working with Beckett burners and they have a certificate of insurance.
Yeah, you might be able to connect those dots, right, and make things happen faster.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right, let's go to risky or too risky. These are rapid fire questions. Imagine you're driving to work without a lid on your coffee cup. Is that risky or too risky?
That's too risky.
That's too risky.
My coffee is sacred.
It has to go down this hole, not on you.
We're not spilling that.
I get it. Let's say you are at an airport and you didn't arrange a ride and someone is saying, hey, I'll take you someplace, risky or too risky?
Too risky.
All right. Okay. I see where this is going. Last one, you're planning to go bungee jumping and you didn't see them check the equipment. Are you still going to go or are you not going to go?
Not going to go.
Not going to go.
Not going to go.
All right. You pass. You're a risk manager.
Okay. I get my card.
Yeah, you're going to get one in the mail from us. Before we go, did you have any final thoughts or advice for our listeners regarding, you talked a lot about you got great mentorship coming into your company. What sort of advice do you give to people that you're mentoring or other risk managers in the field?
Leave your office, get out there and meet everybody that does every job.
That respect for each other is really critical to risk management, right?
Right.
Because you don't want to be looked at as the person like, oh shit, that person just walked in the room.
Exactly. And it's, and if I walk the floor of the facilities and people get to know me, there's more of a chance that, maybe one of the welders will come up to me and say, hey, I just wanted to let you know that I think this might be something you should know about. You want to be approachable. You don't want people to be hiding the fact that they're building a new addition to their facility. You want them to share the information.
Yeah, absolutely. Context is at their level, right? And that it has to get boiled up, I think.
I can't be everywhere all the time. So if I make friends and get more knowledgeable with the facilities and the people in the facilities, then they're more likely to want to call me and have a conversation.
One thing I'm interested in is, how much has your strategy moved to proactive risk management versus reactive procedure-based? Because I know that's kind of a trend over the last 10 years of like, how do we enable the welder, in your example, to understand risk better of their job and what is under their control to improve? I mean, you obviously go out and talk to them, but do you reward people for bringing risks up? How do you create an environment where talking about risk is not a 4-letter word?
Well, that almost runs a little bit more into HR. And I would say in my company, risk management and HR are separate, but there's a lot of gray areas. So I know with more of the safety aspects of things, they have toolbox talks. We did a year where we had quarterly meetings with all the facility managers and safety people on one meeting, and they shared information across the subsidiaries. Each quarter, one subsidiary would kind of lead the meeting and talk about an incident and how they responded to that. And I would like to get back to that with other aspects and risk management things within the company. But it was great with COVID, kind of forced us to be more on these video meetings.
Yeah, right. Getting everyone together was a little bit easier.
Yeah. So we didn't have to fly everybody to one state. Everybody could be in the same room virtually at the same time and share information in real time.
Yeah, I think that's really critical. A lot of risk managers are realizing that they can make partnerships with other departments to help feed that culture of risk is something we should talk about. Risk is something that we should all have in mind. And the good ideas are probably going to come from the ground up to the executive level. I really appreciate you stopping by and having a quick chat with me. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Risk Management Brick by Brick is brought to you by TrustLayer. Find out how TrustLayer manages risk so that the people can build the physical world around us. Head over to TrustLayer.io and then make sure to subscribe to Risk Management Brick by Brick on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. On behalf of the TrustLayer team, thank you for listening.